try and sell a drama in today's market is impossible because TV is full of drama, so why do people need to go to the cinema to watch a drama unless there's a big star in it? As a result of that, a lot of filmmakers and the film industry in general, who are struggling to trying to find a way to make the industry viable, they've been drawn towards horror, and the market's now become saturated. Darklands is like an occult a conspiracy thriller about a journalist in Wales who is investigating the suicide, or the apparent suicide, of a steelworker. He's doing it on behalf of the steelworker's sister, who believes that her brother was involved in a sort of a religious cult, a sort of a nationalist cult. And that had been the victim of a human sacrifice. So he investigates this story, and before he knows it, he finds himself the target of that cult. So cool Cymru is cool Wales. It comes from a period in the mid-90s where there were filmmakers emerging in Wales, and bands emerging in Wales, like the Manic Street Preachers, for example. That Wales was suddenly creating an identity for itself that it might not have had before, through media, through films, and through music. I'm trying to remember what the titles were now. Actually, I can only remember Darklands, but there were two other films that were made at that time that really sort of represented Wales in a way that it had never been represented before. One of the issues really was that lottery funding in the UK emerged at that time. And before lottery funding, the only way you could get money in Wales is if you made a Welsh language film. So the opportunities in Wales were only available to Welsh speakers. So Darklands, for example, was the first Welsh horror movie. It was unheard of for a government funding body to invest in a horror movie. I suppose that's where the cool comes from, that they were starting to do things that were not sort of old-fashioned and traditional. They were starting to embrace kind of pop culture a bit. I got into filmmaking through my love of horror films. I grew up during a time where the BBC was showing horror double bills on a Friday, Saturday night. So I used to send my parents to bed and sit and watch these films, and really sort of fell in love with the genre. Yeah, I think it was in 1975 when I saw Jaws that I decided that's what I want to be. I want to be a filmmaker. My father had a Super 8 camera, and when we went on holiday, he used to film the holiday and send the film off to be processed by the lab, and a week later it would come back, and I used to watch him editing it, and that sort of taught me how to make a film in a way. And I just thought, wow, I've got the camera in the house, I've got the editing equipment in the house, I've got friends at school, let's go off on the weekend and make horror movies. And that's kind of where it all started. I wanted to make a film, but films are very expensive, and if you shoot them on 35mm film, you need to raise like $1 million to make the film, and that was not really something that I was able to do. And I had a script, I had an idea, and I'd been trying for several years to sort of get it set up. When I saw Blair Witch, it made me realize that films don't need to be traditional. You can do a faux documentary, handheld camera, available light. You can shoot it on your mobile phone now, and that sort of democratized filmmaking in a way and allowed me to make the last horror movie. This was the time of Lars von Trier's sort of early films, and the whole Dogma movement. And I saw Festen, and I realized with Festen that even though it's not found footage, the cinematography is digital and quite rough. What really matters in Festen is the writing and the acting. and the directing. So it gave me the confidence, that I didn't need all that 35mm film stock. I didn't need all those big lights. I didn't need all that big crew. I could actually, I just needed a good script with some good actors. I mean, a big part of being a filmmaker and wanting to have a career in filmmaking is that you want somebody to come along and offer you a job. If somebody's going to give you a job, then it legitimizes you, as opposed to doing it all yourself. So when Reborn came along, it was one of those rare opportunities where somebody was coming to me and they wanted me to direct their film. The people behind it were, on the one hand, they were very inexperienced. They were students in a film school and this was their first film. And on the other hand, their teachers were very established genre filmmakers like John Penny and Brian Usner. It was full of challenges because the budget was so tight, the schedule was so tight, and the experience of some members of the crew was very limited. What Reborn is it's a story. It's sort of Frankenstein meets Carrie would be the easy way to describe it. It's ultimately a story of a mother searching for her daughter and a daughter searching for her mother, and those two stories collide. And the film's a tragedy. You've got a monster at the heart of the story that you feel very sorry for. There's a great deal of sympathy for his situation. But ultimately, she's damaged goods, and she's going to bring a lot of problems to the mother. So it's quite an emotional story. And it has a lot of dramatic ingredients, which is unusual for a horror film. When I read the script, my first thoughts was it didn't feel contemporary. It felt very old-fashioned and generic. And as a director, when you're presented with something like that, you think, well, how do I fix that? And I thought, well, we're going through a period of time where nostalgia is a big thing, and then I thought, well, this could be like a celebration of some of my favorite films from the 80s and 90s. Instead of trying to hide what it is, just embrace it. I filled the script with lots of references to other films. There's Psycho, there's Scanners, there's Christine, there's The Omen 2, all the way, quite naturally, there's Carrie and Firestarter, and that gave me an underlying theme to sort of to direct the film with. It's like, well, this is what I want to focus on. It's not the the plot or the story. I'm driven by themes and subtext. The thing about horror, especially in the last decade, is that because it has such a loyal fan base, it's one type of film making that works, and whereas other genres are not working at all. I mean, try and sell a drama in today's market is impossible because TV is full of drama. So why do people need to go to the cinema to watch a drama unless there's a big star in it? As a result of that, a lot of the filmmakers and the film industry in general, who are struggling to trying to find a way to make the industry viable, they've been drawn towards horror. So there's been more and more horror made, and the market's now become saturated with horror. There's too much of it, and therefore it's very, very competitive to get your horror film on the shelf, so to speak. The independent films are falling by the wayside, so it's getting more and more challenging. Plus, at the same time, you've got the streamers, your Netflixes and your Amazons, and even TV channels. They're doing episodic horror. They used to do dramas, they used to do cop shows and hospital shows, Now they're actually doing The Walking Dead, you know, and you're seeing a lot more genre in TV. So that's having a similar effect on independent horror films as you had with drama. You know, why go to the cinema to watch a horror film when you can see it on TV? As a result, it's become a much more conservative space. So horror can be very transgressive and subversive, and not politically correct, and that's when it works. But the way things are going with distribution, with digital, is that it's become a conservative environment, and therefore, you know, it's becoming a little bit bland and a little bit safe. And there really isn't much of an opportunity for really challenging horror films. Yeah, well, this is a big thing with Reborn, because the budget for Reborn meant that the schedule was very tight. We had 9 days to prep and 15 days to shoot. And there's a lot of effects in Reborn, and there's no way we had the time to prepare or even to shoot the practical effects. So we went with digital effects, and that's the first time I've made a film with digital effects. So it was a whole new experience for me, and you know, I think we managed to get a lot of stuff that works, but I think there's other stuff in the film that doesn't work. You know, and I sort of describe working with VFX, with digital effects. It's like working with a bad actor. You know, you've got to really spend a lot of time with that bad actor to try and get a good performance. And often it's not about how much you do; it's about how little you do. There's a tendency to try and do too much with VFX, but the way to make it work is sleight of hand. You know, just use as little of it as possible. It's very tough, sort of creating a career for yourself as a filmmaker, and it takes a lot of time. You know, it's a vocation, and you spend your whole life doing it, and you get to make, you know, a film every 5, 6, 7 years. So it's actually really nice when a festival like Hardline recognizes all your hard work, and you know, does something like they've done with this edition, and do the director spotlight and choose, you know, three films. Increasingly, there's not very many rewards for making a film. The biggest reward is really sharing your film with an audience. So to do it in this context, as a sort of a retrospective or a spotlight, is fantastic. You know, so it's nice when somebody reaches out and recognizes what you've done.